Screen kind of guy, eh?
Dude,
Two screen kind of guy.
in here at the moment, what do we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 screens in here at the moment.
Cool, man.
Hey, we're
Cool,
live.
I get it.
We're live with Dave Gibson
We're
from Elemeno
doing
P,
it.
Streets of Laredo. Do you say Laredo?
Yeah, I say Laredo.
Laredo.
I do say Laredo, but like, hey, I'm not from Texas,
No.
so I mean, I could be saying it wrong.
It's I was going to say a Johnny Cash song. Am I right in saying a Johnny Cash song? Certainly an old rocker song. That line's from where?
You are, Pat. You are correct. You are correct. He actually covered it, the song, and the song is actually so ancient. The song is so old that it has fallen into mythology about who actually wrote the song. So Johnny Cash made it famous. A couple of other guys did too. And it was a book, and it was basically, it's a story about a cowboy with chlamydia.
It's a good name for a band. Then fits in well with the rock and roll lifestyle.
From what I understand.
Hey Dave, thanks for having a chat with us tonight. You are back in New Zealand, back in Aotearoa, feet on firm, terra firma again, from New York, escaping the winter and the COVID. And you're in managed isolation right now, with a 2.5-year-old, which I think is most people would say is a pretty tall order. But thanks for jumping in and having a chat. And we're just opening a drink. If you want, have you got a drink with you? Open it up and off we go and have a chat.
I believe I have a New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc here, which
Cheers.
I'm very appreciative of. Thank you, managed isolation.
I tell you what, my one question for you, my one prepped question for you about managed isolation is, do they still have an active minibar? Because I was thinking all these people in managed isolation, the tens of thousands of people, if they still have minibars going at those minibar prices, then those hotels will be creaming it.
They would be funding themselves. You're right. They would be funding themselves. The small harmonica-shaped bottles of Jack Daniels.
Yep. Toblerones.
For $15 a pop. The Toblerones, they'd be going. You're right. That's a smart, man. You should talk to Jacinda. The answer is no. In my current managed isolation, no minibar.
Right. I wonder if they've done that. I wonder if they've done that on purpose. I was wondering that today when I talked about having a beer with you tonight. Where would you get it from?
Yeah. But but we do have. We're very lucky. We have the abilities to obviously buy. Meals from the hotel. We can buy alcohol from the hotel in a limited quantity, which is probably smart. And then we can also order out. Countdown or what have you. So it's not too bad.
So you get to. I had a chat with Jack Tame a couple of weeks ago when he came back from the US.
Good man.
For the presidential election.
Good man.
And he was quite
fun fact.
Go.
Fun fact. Jack Tame. I hope, is he married now?
I don't think so, but I don't know for sure.
Well, fun fact. He met his fiance of who he was going to get married to, which I'm hoping he's married to now. And if I'm saying this and he didn't get married, maybe something went bad. But fun fact, he met the woman of his dreams for at least a very long period of time at a Streets of Laredo concert at the Mercury Lounge in New York City.
Oh, there you go. So he was dating an American girl, is what you're saying?
No, I think she was a Kiwi.
Oh, okay.
But they met at a Streets of Laredo gig, and I'm pretty sure they got married. Or I don't know, actually, because I've been away a little while. So if they didn't get married, my condolences.
I'll just leave that right alone. I'll leave it hanging there in a positive way that no one will ever know. Hey, I think he's a pretty private person.
I need to catch up
with that kind of stuff as well. So I don't know if he's ever. I just Googled while you were talking Jack Tame married, and I didn't really find anything. So some of us
maybe I shouldn't have mentioned that.
Well, no, I think some of us are private with some finer details, and if he is, he's kept it on the DL, and good on him.
He's a good man.
He's a good man. And he was quite complimentary of the isolation that he was in, the managed isolation. He got shipped down to Hamilton. How are you finding it in general? How are you finding life for 2 weeks in what some people would say stuck in a hotel?
I feel very lucky too, because I have heard some, probably as most New Zealanders, you probably haven't been following the updates on the various managed isolation hotels as carefully as we have been, because you don't need to. But There has been some bad stories, like depending on the hotel, like maybe you don't have any outdoor area, which is really difficult for 2 weeks, if especially if you have a kid, there's all different various hotels. Now, we're all very thankful that the hotels even exist, but they're not all created equal. I feel very lucky. I'm out here in Manukau, across the road from Rainbow's End, and a very popular Valentine's restaurant that is frequented a lot by the people of the neighborhood. And we got a big outdoor area, really cool car park. Pretty lucky. We got a little suite with a separate lounge and from the bedroom. And so me and my beautiful wife, Sarah Jane, can kind of put our son down and he can go to sleep and chill out there, and we can be separated. Whereas if we're in one bedroom, the classic hotel room with the 2 beds and the television, that would be very difficult. I couldn't be doing the Zoom right now, for example.
Yeah.
The best thing ever, which we didn't even know was a possibility, is we were traveling with friends from New York City. Tim Youngson, who you may know,
Stereogram
was the guitarist of Stereogram.
Yep. And he was working with Lord.
A very good friend of mine.
Wasn't he working in management with Lord for a while?
Yeah. Him and Scott McLaughlin managed Lord for many years, in the beginnings of her career, and and we all kind of moved to New York City together, about 9 years ago, and we traveled back home together, and they had some kids too. And then we got to the hotel. They're like, "Oh, are you guys traveling together?" And we're like, "Yes, we are." And they're like, "Cool, we'll connect your bubbles." So we're actually in connected bubbles. So what that means is we can hang out, which is amazing. So I feel very lucky that we have this kind of situation where we can go to each other's rooms. This is all legal. This is allowed.
Nice.
We can hang out together outside. We do exercise in the morning. I'm running like a boot camp scenario with the guys to keep them fit. And then we have happy hour together at night. It's fantastic. And our kids hanging out together, and we kind of share babysitting duties and stuff like that while various members of our adult crew work.
So it feels like, and Jack told of the story how the police came onto the plane to then say, "Hi guys," even though it sounds scary when you have the police, but they kind of directed it through. But it sounds like they're being sensible. You guys traveled together, you've been in New York together, you're basically whanau, you might as well stay together in the bubble. That makes complete sense, and also helps everyone, especially you guys.
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine, like, we go outside, our kids would all be just wanting, they're too young to understand. So, yeah, I think it was really like pragmatic, and also it actually makes sense. We are in a bubble in New York City together. We were on a plane together. We all got COVID tests together, like on the 1st of December, which were negative. We got our COVID tests again afterwards on the 3rd day here, also negative. So, yeah, it kind of makes sense. And, and I feel very lucky.
Tell me about, you're based in New York. When I think about people being based in New York, I always see what are they called? The brownstones, like the Bill Cosby type houses from the Cosby Show.
Yep.
You're based in New York. Tell me about life in New York. Obviously, at the start of COVID back in March, it was the hotspot of the world. What's it been like 6 months in New York with the current and ongoing American COVID crisis?
Yeah, it's been, fascinating. Like I mentioned, I've been in New York for about 9 years now, and it is, like hands down, not too many people would argue that it is one of the greatest cities in the world. As far as cities go, it's an awesome city. It does city things fantastically. So to be in this really great city and to have everything that a great city has to offer stripped away from it is quite fascinating. Because when New York City can't do what New York City does, which revolves around, really crucially around having a huge population, right? And jamming those people into small spaces. When they can't do that, it's quite a weird town, and you start noticing the cracks. You start noticing the trash. You start noticing that your apartment is a little bit shitty. You start noticing that there's no trees around. You start noticing that, so that's been a kind of a weird thing, because we've basically been, so we've been locked down, it's longer than 6 months, actually. It's like almost 10 or 11. And we have not really shared any experiences with anyone other than 3 other families. That's been my life for since March. And I stopped going to, I work in music management in New York City. I stopped going to the office. We have offices in Tribeca. I stopped going there, and I think on March the 6th or something like that, we all thought, is this a bit extreme? This seems a bit crazy to stop going to work. And I haven't been back since closed down those offices. And just hung out with these 3 other families for, almost 10 months in New York City. So that experience has been, quite odd. Then it's, coupled with, obviously had quite a lot of civil unrest as well in America. And so all in all, it's just been a pretty, I don't think I'll ever forget it. It's definitely going to be probably one of the years that I remember most, ironically.
I think it's one of those years that, I don't know if you had relation to or in sort of the wars, the world wars. My grandparents and elderly people who were, more like back in the 90s when they were still around.
Yeah.
And
my granddad. Yep.
And I wonder if this will be the year that children will be telling their grandkids in 50, 60 years about, remember that year that everyone was supposed to stay inside for the whole year. It'll be referencing, it's been a bit different in New Zealand, and I've talked on most of these podcasts with people when it comes up about having New Zealand privilege. They talk about sort of white privilege or male privilege or whatever, or Western privilege. It's a for people who don't kind of get it, it's a privilege we have that we have no rights to because we've done nothing for it. And there's no reason that I should be in New Zealand, but luckily I am. I've had this result with COVID that kind of feels like New Zealand privilege. But mate, the world.
Yeah, it's a nice way of describing privilege, by the way.
Yeah, well, it's I've got no rights to be here. I mean, even that my parents' DNA was here, there's still a million opportunities from within. I don't want to talk about parents copulating, but for that one egg to end up being me anyway. So it's literally nothing was done. And when we look at the world, and I know you're watching me on a phone, so you might not be able to see this very well. You look at the USA right now for COVID, and 15 million cases yesterday. Yesterday they had a 9/11. 3,243 people died in America yesterday from COVID. So it's just been such a blessing to be in New Zealand.
Yeah, it's a weird world. Like, we literally have been wearing masks since March, and basically not living a normal life. Like, it's not like, when you guys have had lockdowns, you guys have had really serious lockdowns, like for a week or two, you basically can't leave your house. We can always leave our house, like our apartment. But you basically just don't interact with anybody, and I'm so used to it now. You don't touch anybody, you don't stay away from each other, and then we just have a very small little crew where we behave sort of normally, and that's it. It is bizarre.
It's kind of that dystopian future now, isn't it? You think about this dystopian future when, the nuclear bombs happen and there's only 3 people living in the neighborhood surviving, sort of thing. But we're doing it now by choice and because we kind of have to. Because I'm much the same. And even though New Zealand is so safe compared to the rest of the world, I don't ever want to get into sort of the feeling that, no, there's no problems in New Zealand, because there could be tomorrow. But even I'm still like kind of pulling this up like this to open the doors at the dairy. And, I've still got, around that if I come out of the supermarket, I squeegee my hands. And so things have changed, even in a place that's quote unquote safe. So imagine what they are in a place like America or parts of Europe that are resurging at the moment where it's not safe.
Yeah. You're right.
You're here for summer. Yeah, you're here for summer, and obviously there's tours and stuff going on. Obviously, to get away from the cold and the snow is one thing, but you know, they're just starting to roll out vaccines now. You must be thinking, you know, God, please have it sorted within the next 4 months, at least these vaccines, so you can go back to a different country under a different president.
Yep, totally under a different president. By the way, that was super fun. Like, obviously, you know, I say it with a certain amount of trepidation because, like, you never know what Trump's going to do, like, or pull. But when it was announced that it was projected that Biden was going to be the winner.
Yep.
It was a Saturday, I think a Saturday like morning for us in New York, and like it was just amazing. Like me and my wife and my little boy were going for a run, heading towards Manhattan Bridge, and people just, you know, so I wasn't looking at my phone or anything, you know, and then all of a sudden people start tooting and people start beeping their horns, and then people are jumping and like, you know, like doing this in the street. And then all of a sudden, it, you know, floods in that looks like Biden's going to win. And I didn't say it looks like Biden's going to win because I'm just so nervous about what Trump could pull. But we know he did win. But it was beautiful. It was beautiful, and it was like I think it was like a really collective sigh of relief, and everybody just needed some good news. Like it'd been like a whole year of, you know, really crappy news, and it was beautiful. And there was literally dancing in the streets in New York City. So yes, I agree with you, man. I hope when I get back to New York City, you know, obviously I hope that, you know, Biden is in charge, which should happen, but you never know because Trump is pretty crazy, and that the COVID thing has chilled out a little bit, or a lot, and but for now, just going to really enjoy being here in New Zealand, and you know, and really enjoy how lucky we are to be, you know, I guess isolated. You know, we're a little isolated country, and be thankful for it.
You've definitely got a ticket back, as in you've got a booked in ticket. Like, if, for example, things weren't that crash hot, would you be able to move it? Or are you like, it's the X of Y month and we're going back no matter what?
Yeah, no, I just booked a one-way ticket. This is the first time I've ever booked a one-way ticket, you know. But I have a plan when I have to go back. But just booked a one-way ticket, you know, and, you know, because it was a little bit too, who knows what date, you know, where these things are going to shimmy. So just booked the one-way ticket this time. But we're definitely going back.
The latest, not to get into a political conversation about it, but it sounds like you keep a bit of an eye on it, but the latest on Trump, I don't know if you've heard, is that he had the opportunity in summer to get 100 million more units of the vaccine. He turned it down, and now America is going to have to wait for their second round of shots until July, because those vaccines have been sold off to other countries and stuff now. So that ultimate deal maker, the guy who's going to come on as a businessman because he makes great deals, has fucked the countries more than once, it would seem, from looking in the outside.
Yeah, I don't think history's going to be very, very kind on Trump.
It is fascinating, though.
It
is fascinating that you say, you know, the big sigh of relief, maybe in New York, but when he gets 72 million people voting for him, you go, gosh, There's certainly is a duality to being in America, and there's certainly opposing views, aren't there?
There is, and I mean, New York City is like a different country, of course. Like same with LA, same with Chicago, all these big cities. But I'm not one of these guys that kind of like, you know, casts aspersions on all the Republican voters. Like, you know, they're just, you know, I've met a bunch of them. Like, you know, the times that we've toured around the South and stuff like this. There's also good Republican people. Like, I'm not one of them. Obviously, I'm not. I can't even vote in America, but I don't consider myself one of those on that political spectrum. But there's lots of good people on that side of the spectrum. I have to be honest. Like, I think once when we start to saying that, you know, I'm not, you know, when we just start saying they're all racist or all ridiculous or stupid, I think that's a little bit a part of the problem. You know, we got to understand, well, what are these people, you know, why are these people, you know, voting for this man? I mean, I think mainly they don't, it's not so much the man, they have a belief system that lies with the Republicans, you know, and this crazy, ridiculous psychopath is currently in charge of that. So they feel like they don't have a choice. Now, us guys on the left side are going, well, how could you possibly do that? You know, all your moral high ground has been stolen away from you the minute you vote for this guy. But there is, I mean, I can tell you there's pretty good people on that side of the fence too, in my humble opinion, you know, and some really, really nasty people and narcissistic and psychopathic people like Donald Trump, you know.
I think that comes down to this old argument that, like, I came across this teenager the other day, and, you know, you take a teenager with a grain of salt because they think they're A, 10 foot tall and bulletproof, and B, that they think they know everything. And there's this thing going around amongst teenagers at the moment that all cops are bastards, ACAB they call it. And it's actually New Zealand teenagers jumping on the bandwagon since George Floyd in America, and that's kind of been the starting point from it. And I just have a very gentle conversation with them saying, well, if we're honest, some cops are bastards because cops are people and some people are bastards. And it's the same. You talk about people are psychopaths or people are nasty. It's because some people are nasty, and nasty people support every element of politics, and there's bad people on the left and there's bad people on the right, and there's, you know, because it's filled with people and people to fail human beings. You know, we are... you know, what do they talk about? If we got eliminated from the earth would probably go on almost much better without us, and just keep on like we weren't here. Keep on.
Totally, man. Gaia theory. Like, there's a kind of. Have you ever heard of Gaia theory?
No, tell me.
Gaia theory is like this theory. This friend of mine gave me a book about it. Julian Curran, it is basically the theory that the planet Earth will figure out ways to kind of moderate itself regardless, you know? And so if that means that it has to get rid of the humans, maybe that's what has to happen, you know? It's a little bit of a depressing book because kind of the guy who wrote it, if you look it up, Gaia, Gaia theory.
Yep. There's this guy here.
There's some... Let me have a look. What's his name?
It's Gaia. The Gaia hypothesis, the Gaia paradigm, also known as the Gaia theory,
James Lovelock,
or Gaia principle, proposes that living organisms interact with their inorganic surroundings on Earth to form a synergistic and self-regulating complex system that helps to maintain and perpetuate the conditions for life on the planet.
And what's the next part? I can't read it. So
the hypothesis was formulated by chemist James Lovelock and co-developed by microbiologist Lynn Margulis in the 1970s.
So So it's really interesting. So basically, it's just saying, at the moment, planet Earth, might have too many people on it, and so it has to find a way to moderate itself. He's a little bit controversial because he suggests certain things like nuclear energy is a solution. To dealing with carbon footprint, things like that. But I'm not sure how we started talking about that. About the reason there was a boom.
The Earth, the Earth going on without us.
Yes, that's what you said, and I was like, Gaia theory. That's what. Yeah, you should check that guy out. I think you'd like him.
Yeah, it's interesting. The thing about
with the cop thing, too. I felt really lucky when I was in America because I seen American cops and. They're different. It's a different situation there. It's not even the same situation. You can't even it's like comparing apple and oranges. The police force in New Zealand to the police force in America. It's different. You know, it's just it's crazily different. And sure, there's good people in both police force in America and police force in New Zealand, but there's a different situation going on here. The amount of times I've been cheeky to a cop when I was a teenager, and just walked away from it. You're literally scared of policemen in America.
Right.
I am literally scared of a policeman generally in America. Like in New York, I will stay away. I would not, I would just not try to engage. If I was in trouble, I wouldn't, have to be in tons of trouble to help. Now, I'm not saying that there's tons of really good people there, but there is a systematic problem in the infrastructure, and it's a massive country, and there's guns, and there's all this kind of crapped up stuff, and there's 10, 20, 30 years and 40 years of you know, these cops, you know, and all been teaching other cops how to behave and stuff like this. It's apples and oranges. Well, I'm thinking about when I'm like running around Milford Beach. This is, you talk about New Zealand privilege again, you know, and getting pulled over for cops for drinking or throwing eggs at people's houses and stuff like that when I was a kid. Like, not once did I ever fear for my life, you know, like it's different.
Yeah, and as you say, it's something that most of us in New Zealand, even if we have toured parts of America or the world, you don't still get that day to day, you know, seeing cops or guns or whatever on the street every day of your life. I think how do you feel after being there for 9 years when you see a gun there now? Do you still kind of go, geez, that's not part of my culture, that's a bit weird, or is it, have you become accustomed to it now?
Yeah, I mean, I still hate it, still feel really uncomfortable when I see it, you know, in public, in a deli, you know, like just it does freak me out, and still feel like it's ridiculous. And you know, but you know, America is such that they can't even, like, not even the Democrats can ever talk about taking the guns. Yeah, you know, I know Trump always says the Democrats are going to take your guns, but the Democrats don't even actually want to do that either. Because it's so entrenched that guns are so important, or some type of gun is very, very important to, you know, uphold your rights against a corrupt government, which is pretty hilarious, considering the current government, and the inability that any gun could, like, what are you going to do with your little gun with this corrupt government? Like, what are you going to do? Like storm the White House? Like, it's pretty funny. But yeah, and I still don't feel comfortable about it. No.
It's quite nice. I mean, I might sound a little bit defeatist. I don't know what the word is, but it's quite nice to think that you've been involved in, you know, this community for a decade, yet part of your roots, part of the thing you didn't like at the start, you still don't like now, and it's one of the kind of scarier parts of the community. So you haven't lost that part of you, which is, I don't know, it feels like a nice thing.
No way. I mean, we're so lucky, you know. I mean, just feel very lucky to be a New Zealander, especially this time of. I guess maybe this whole situation has kind of highlighted how lucky we all are. In fact, you know, down here in this little isolated part of the planet, you know, quite nice.
I'm feeling like a Fred Dagg song should be redone. You know, that you don't know how lucky we are. We don't know how lucky. As you say that for the first time ever, I'm just reminded of that song and how much truer that is today.
And of course, all we got to do is not overdo it, because you know, when you overdo that type of sentiment, it becomes nationalism. You know, we don't want that. But yeah, we just like just we are very, very lucky, and we just keep it there. You know, don't go too crazy.
Well, that's
America has a tendency to do.
That's the irony, because the path to fascism goes through nationalism, patriotism, nationalism, fascism, and there's every bit of nationalism from the outside looking in, and you can speak to this from living there, looks like America is certainly nationalist, and it feels like some of the you know, I'm not casting aspersions on all of them, but some of the Trump supporters are starting to tick past that nationalism, and there's only one place to go from it.
Yeah, totally. And tons of them aren't. Like, tons of them are just exactly like dudes like you and me. Like, you know, I can attest to it. You know, you know, they could be living in Dunedin, they could be living on K Road. You know, they're just good. Tons of good people. You know, but you know, a whole bunch that think America is just the bee's knees, and have been kind of like talking this up for fucking, you know, decades, you know. Eventually that stuff gets toxic and nasty and turns into something very bad.
Well, Trump,
in my humble opinion,
Trump is not a new phenomenon. Trump is a reaction to probably minimum 20 years of going to further and further and further extremes. But then you could also argue, you know, a reaction of 100, 150 years of traveling down that path. I mean, on some levels, Trump is a reaction to Barack Obama, which is a horrible thought, but a reality in some areas. And also, you know, when you take, and you can see it happening, because when you take it to a certain place, it's only got one place to keep going, and now they're finding out that the people who have gone with him, who are now not even standing against him, but like William Barr, the head of the DOJ, has said there's been no big amount of fraud here for this, and now he's being attacked by the same people who are lifting him up because they can't see beyond the Trump nationalist support. And he's I'm not saying, and I agree with you, I would never say that. Some people would say that if you vote for Trump, you must be a racist. That I think that's as silly as saying, all cops are whatever, or because it's a diverse group of people, and it might not be diverse when it comes to ethnic or whatever, but it is still diverse amongst the way people think and the way people act. But yeah, it's almost like if you build it up to a point, and if you keep poking the bear, and then the bear turns around and bites you in the hand, you've only got yourself to blame. That's what the politics feels like. They've been poking the bear for such a long time, and now people are getting bit.
Yeah, it's so divisive at the moment, man. Like that's one thing I would just say, like it's just horrible, like the divisiveness there, and and like I consider myself a left wing kind of dude, but I don't like the way the left is behaving either towards the right. It's just like everyone's screaming at each other, and I really don't. I'm like we have, like, if we're gonna get anywhere, we have to listen and at least give like give the people who are arguing and screaming at the benefit of the doubt, to get somewhere, it's just really, it's a horrible way to live. And over there, it feels acute, it's people screaming, no one listening,
As you're saying that, I'm reminded of a quote which I looked up. I was going to say, I'm not sure. Oh, it is from Gandhi. It's from a quote from Gandhi, talking about.
Oh yeah, I've heard of him.
You heard of that dude, that guy. If we follow the philosophy, this is not the quote, I'm paraphrasing it, but if we follow that philosophy of an eye for an eye, what would end up is the whole world would be blind. So that's sort of what exactly. It is. You can't just attack back who's just been attacked, because if you keep doing that, then the whole world ends up being blind. So
yeah. And like there were some good people, like on both sides, and they've been raised in a certain way, and they hold certain values like really, really highly, like they're right up there for them, and it's difficult for them to let those values go sometimes, even to the point where they'll vote for a guy like Trump when they, all the Christian fundamentalist people. I mean, I'm sure they know that he is not a Christian, but he is holding, he's like kind of, spearheading their values, and they feel like the Democrats aren't. So then they vote for this crazy guy, which, I mean, you can say that's crazy. Like, I just don't know how you can do that, but I can sort of understand it.
I think, again, I mean, you have a better place to speak to this than I do because you're living there, but I have interviewed a couple of right-wing fundamentalists during this election year, and I'm sure there are some people who think, he's really just the head of the party. I don't support him. But there's also another element amongst that Christian fundamentalism, the evangelicals, who really do. I'll send you the link, but I did a podcast with a couple of musicians actually called Haley and Camille, and they wrote a song, Vote Trump 2020. It was this catchy little ditty, and I wanted to talk to them. And they're like, they believe he is God's choice, and they believe it was going to be a landslide. And I actually was communicating with them after the election saying, let's have another chat. They wouldn't come and chat to me in the end because they wanted to, they thought that rather than talking to me, maybe them praying would be better because that's what needed to happen to have Trump win. Now, I don't want to mock their beliefs, really. No, I don't. But there is also an element of that really do believe. I asked him that question about, grabbing by the pussy, and I asked him the question about the cheating with a porn star, and he's like, and they were just like, well, he wasn't a Christian then. He only became a Christian just before he became president. So basically, all that's washed away. And so I think obviously you're right. There are some people who just go, he's the head of the Republican Party, I'm a Republican. But there's a sector of that group that really do believe.
Yeah, they do believe, but I also feel like they just like go this. They doesn't believe in abortion, doesn't believe in gay rights, and he's nominated a bunch of Supreme Court justices, which is the biggest thing ever, by the way, that are going to change the whole country for 40 years, 50 years, 60 years, So that outweighs who. I don't think they actually care who he is as a human. If I was to say something, it's like they go like he does those three things, That is worth it to us.
Yeah, I think you're right about the justices, and I think the way that was most obvious was Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney has been an ardent critic of Trump since day one, yet when he had a chance to appoint that justice in the last 30 days before the election, Amy Coney Barrett, all of a sudden Mitt Romney was supporting it. And as soon as you go there, you're like, that's all it's about. Really, that's all it's about is the justice.
Which is a crazy system, by the way. I mean, for all the New Zealanders don't really know, because I didn't know before I went there either. It's an insane system. Like, you nominate a Supreme Court judge, and they have a lifetime appointment. I'm like, hey, how about we just do this? Like, how about a 10-year appointment?
Yeah.
Like, imagine if you're guaranteed your sweet job for 10 years. That'd be pretty cool. Okay, maybe 10 years not long enough. Let's call it 20. Like, let's just go, hey, like, I'm going to give you your sweet job for 20 years. Like, to me, it's insane to nominate a person for a lifetime appointment. Like, like, because it's insane. Like, these people end up, having these positions at the very end part of their life.
Yeah.
As we knew with Ruth Bader Ginsburg, right? Like who's we all love on the left, because, we love her, but she was like on death's door for probably the last couple of years and still doing her job. I'm like, this is crazy, but she had to be, because she was like, I can't leave my position now, because it's gonna, open up another Supreme Court justice, which obviously ended up happening anyway, under the Trump administration. But I'm like, man, maybe just do 20 years. But America, that stuff is very, very complicated, and for stuff that seems so simple to us, like, why not just make it a bit shorter?
Yeah. Well, they have a system based around, people having to cross the country by horseback. I mean, that's why they have the college vote versus the popular vote. It's because that's what it was based on. And the reason, I think in a couple of days' time, you get, quote, the final vote. And don't believe this crap about an election night. It's always been December I think it's 15th, that they make the final call. And that's because literally all the votes used to have to come to one location from all over the country in stagecoaches. That's why they did it that way. And they haven't changed. It's much like the Second Amendment you were talking about. Second Amendment doesn't give you the right to shoot someone who's breaking into your house. Second Amendment says very clearly the right to keep and bear arms to overthrow a tyrannical government. That's got nothing to do with protecting your TV in your lounge.
Which we currently have, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely. And
in my humble opinion.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. Hey, listen, not to fill up the whole night with politics, although I would and I'd love to.
And I'm no expert.
Yeah, but your life experience
all I have is anecdotal evidence.
Yeah. I've always wanted to ask you a question about Elemeno P, because I've heard a rumor.
Yes, please.
And I really wanted to know, and I don't believe this to be true, but often, there's a doot of truth in every rumor. I'll tell you what the rumor was. I'm a little bit embarrassed to say, because I think it's so ridiculous that it's not going to be true.
I love it because 20 years in, these type of things are fantastic to hear.
This is about day one, this rumor. It's not about 20 years in either. I was told by someone of significant musical standing that Elemeno P was basically made up as a concept in someone's basement and got signed based on that concept before having done anything. So that's the rumor that I've heard. Do you want to speak to it, or is there something that you can explain about that?
No, totally. I know this rumor. I've heard it a million times, like all through our career. Now it's sort of like true in a sort of a way, but unfortunately, the kind of master concept plan came from me and Justin, not a record company or something like this, which is normally where it comes from, right? Like a record company come and put together this band.
No, just so you're
So
clear, what I heard was you guys, it was you the guys, the members of the band came up with the concept and then basically was signed to a label.
yeah, well, yeah, I guess that's kind of sort of true. So I'll tell you, I'll give you how we got signed. So me and Justin and Scotty had all played in lots of bands before, many bands, and learning the ropes, playing songs, etc. Learning songwriting. Lani wasn't quite in the band yet, but she joined the band two live shows after we started, right? So, and it became super crucial, hugely crucial. But at the point when we're trying to get a record deal, essentially was Justin and I. And so basically what was happening, what we're noticing is that we kept on starting these bands and then trying to tour and kind of, build up an audience and all this kind of stuff. And then the band would break up. Like anyone that's been in a band probably understands that, generally speaking, there's one or two people in that band that are really gung-ho, and there's a couple of people that want to, maybe one person wants to be an accountant, whatever. But we'd been playing music our whole lives and kept on doing this. And then, so we're like in our early 20s and we're young and cocky. And then me and Justin are just hanging out. And we're like, what about this? What about if we just write some songs, make a demo, and try to get a record deal first? Now, this seemed like a kind of controversial and kind of backwards way to do something at the time. Record the songs.
So when you say first, you mean write and record before you play any live gigs and get a record deal off the recordings, but you haven't played an actual concert yet?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, exactly that. And so, and it seems like a really like a bold and ridiculous thing, and it was all full of bravado and naivety, which is a fantastic thing that you have in your 20s, right?
Yep.
Those two things are really important. Bravado and naivety. I don't have that anymore. I'm fucking 45 and I know how hard life is and I could never ever do it again. But at that time I was like, everyone fucking sucks. We're amazing. Now it's not true. We weren't, right? Blah, 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 blah. Fucking this is so easy. Everything's easy, blah, blah, blah. Bravado and naivety, right? And so we make a demo, me and Justin. At the time I'm a drummer. And so I play the drums and I sing because it seemed like, I could sing. I think Justin could sing just as good, but I'd written a couple of these kind of the early parts of these songs. He played bass and guitar, right? We made a demo. It was pretty cool. He was working at a studio called Deep Grooves at the time,
right?
On High Street. This is in our early 20s. He was like an intern, basically. We basically snuck in there. Oh no, this is okay. Sorry, I'm back.
Yeah, no, with you still.
Cool. So my phone is running out of batteries. This is a bummer. Let me see if I might be able to switch over to my computer too. Let me see. Yeah. And so he is working as an intern. He goes, Dave, let's go record these songs. So we do, and we feel pretty good about them, and we start playing them around our friends. But we feel so good about them, we decide, what about if we were to do this properly and then put it together as a package and make a CD? This is a cool thing. This is like a weird thing too, because everyone doesn't do this CD thing until way, way, way later.
Yeah.
In early 2000s, right? And so we do some more recordings at our apartment. We make a 3-song demo, which was Fast Times in Tahoe, Every Day's a Saturday, and a song called Fast Pop Song. We just did it ourselves, us three, and then we put together a package of a CD, and with a band name. And then we went and talked to our friends. We went and talked to our guys who are awesome musicians who are also playing all the time, every time. And I said to Scotty, hey, Scotty, if we get a record deal, do you want to be in our band? And he goes, yeah, of course. Now, he's the best fucking drummer I know,
Yeah.
right? And then we go to this guy called Paul, who's a really cool bass player at the time. We're like, hey, Paul, you want to be in the band? He didn't work out, but he's a really amazing musician and still makes amazing music. He's like, yes, of course. And we go to Godfrey de Groot, who still plays with us today. He's like a professor of music at Auckland University, saxophone player. He always plays with us. Like, he's played with us 99% of the show. If we get a record, do you want to be in the band? He said, yes, of course. And then we just we go to my friend Simon Chesterman and Calvin So and our friends who are designers, and we're like, let's put together something. But you got to remember that we had 3 fucking amazing songs that we had written on this little demo. And then we started pitching it, right? And so we just decided, well, let's go pitch it. And so we didn't decide to build up a fan base. We just started to pitch it. And then 6 months later, Ashley Page actually got hold of me, who is, famously now manages Joel Little,
right?
Who produced and co-wrote all the songs of Lord.
Yep.
And has a massive stable of amazing artists and producers, including Joris 658. Is it? Who knows what that big viral hit at the moment? I don't know. Anyway. But he at the time was working at an indie label, and he was really interested. And then I went and talked to Lisa Cotter, who was an intern, who is now sort of basically running Warner Music at the time, but she was 20 in her 20s too, and she was really interested. And she pitched it to her people, who actually turned it down.
Mm-hmm.
And then some buzz started happening, and then Universal got hold of it. And they wanted to meet with us, and so we went and met with them. And through Matty J, a guy called Matty J. I'm doing this in kind of a rushed way now. And we met with them, and they said, cool, let's do it. And we're like, okay, cool. And then we walked out, and we're like, what does that mean? And then they sent us a contract, and then we got a record deal. And then we worked our asses off to become a good band, because we weren't really a band, but we'd written some good songs. And then the first show that we ever played was support for Sum 41 at the power station, right? And then we just carried on. But everyone should know that everyone still thought it was going to fail, 100%, including Universal. But they were really respectful. They're like, man, when our first album came out, it sounded like it wasn't going to work, and they were like, Adam Holt, who's a really good man. Here at Universal, was like, hey Dave, I don't think we hit it on this one, but we'll get it on the second one. But then turned out we did hit it on the first one. So yeah, I guess it's sort of true. But it was just for me and Justin, what we were doing wasn't working. Just starting a band, working our asses off, and then people quit the band, and the band implodes. Starting a band, there's so many times we started so many bands, it was ridiculous. And we're like, well, let's just record the songs, pitch, and then go straight to it. It was just like us just jump in the queue. We're like, let's just go straight to that and then work out that stuff. So I guess what you've heard is sort of true.
It's nice to hear it in its entirety, though, that whole story. Hey, look, before I ask you something else, are you okay for your phone? Is your battery okay? You plugged in?
Yeah, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just try to switch over to my phone. So I'm going to keep talking to you and keep this thing interesting whilst I find your message on Facebook Messenger that you messaged me, and then I'm going to just open up the Zoom. Then we'll have 2 Zooms of me for a split moment, and maybe some feedback loops, and then I'll fix it, and then we'll continue.
The feedback loops, much like Billie Eilish, I'm sure the feedback loops can be used for some amazing piece of music in the future.
Yes, in the future,
if it happens.
Got to put in this passcode, but yes. So this is good. This is working. This is nice. Is that satisfying you, Pat? About the because when you hear that kind of thing, what does it feel like to you? Does it feel fake to you? Because to me, it doesn't feel fake. It just feels like a different way of approaching a thing that wasn't working. And as musicians, we're just making music our whole entire lives. And then we're like, well, a bunch of the ways aren't working.
I think
just try a different way.
I think it sounds like an opportunity has been. Oh, there comes the feedback, Luke. You shut down your phone there. I think we've got you. I can probably almost go 3 up because I've got a 3 up view and a 2 up view. There's my 2 up view. There's my 3 up view. I've got all three. I've got all 3 of us up right now. So if you hang up your phone, I think we'll stay connected once you're going. I've got you and I've got you on 3. Got me and you and you. This is like you're in stereo and I've got one camera. That doesn't work. That's not
cool,
fair.
Man. This is gonna work. This is cool.
So as long as your audio is working on your laptop, when you're ready to turn off your phone, we'll see how that works.
I am. Right.
And I'll go back to a 2 up version.
You hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
I'm assuming that's coming through your laptop, not your phone. There we go. And I go back to a 2 shot, and there you are. You still talking to me?
Yep. Can you hear me?
Perfect, mate. Absolutely seamless.
Great.
Seamless. Hey,
Great.
there's something I'll say to you. At times we all have opportunities that other people don't, for whatever reason, and we walk through that door or we don't. I told my story just in the last couple of podcasts. I can't remember who to because I'm a bit brain dead at this time of year. And I told the story about getting into radio. I basically walked into radio when everyone else following me has had a communications degree. For whatever reason, on that day, at that moment, the boss at More FM said, why don't you just come on board and we'll train you up? And so it sounds like that. But I am also interested in one other part of this conversation. I know you, Scotty in particular. I think you though as well, because you did things like the Parachute Music Festival and the kind of churchy scene.
We did Parachute only once at the end of our career.
2011. Was that any part of
I could tell you about that.
Was that any part of the kind of? Was that any part of your life, like the kind of churchy scene? Was it something you did in your 20s, like a lot of people do, and it stays back there, or is it? Because I know Scotty was not to talk about his personal life, but anyone who's involved with the church stuff, and people used to go around parachuting wearing t-shirts. I know Scotty Pearson, he was pretty famous in that world. And I guess what I'm wondering, look, I love kind of religious conversations. I spoke to a guy a few podcasts ago who said that he died after being stung by box jellyfish and went to hell and heaven. I love those kind of conversations. But was there any part of it which, for want of a better word, was for whatever reason you walking through sort of a universe moment that gave you that opportunity?
Well, I mean, me, Scotty, and Justin all grew up in the church. Well, me and Scotty especially, and then Justin later, just later, and so we all came from that scenario. We actually didn't play. That's why I just want to say we didn't actually play at Parachute until 2011. I can't remember when it actually was, but and for us that was like at the end of our career, actually, when the career was over. It felt like because and that was pretty funny. That was a pretty funny show. But we all grew up with it, and I think most of us will all attribute tons of the skills that we learned from growing up in that situation. Like from the time I was about 13, all I was doing was playing in church.
Right.
And various different things like playing trumpet. And then playing drums, and then got really, really into drums. And then you're in this really safe environment where everyone's really, really encouraging you. You're also learning about pop songs because most worship songs and kind of that type of things are just really good, catchy little pop songs, And so you're learning about pop songs. Not only that, and then when you start being on stage at a church, you start to understand how to what moves a crowd, you can, how to manipulate emotions,
Three fast songs at the start, 3 slow songs, and off you go.
Yeah, but also it's like if you're you're doing this bang, 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 and then bound to like a slow build and stuff like that. You start to think, and then when you're a kid at that time, me and Justin used to joke about it. Like we're like, I think we because the kind of the thing everyone would say was like, oh well, something really really magical is happening in the spirit, which I don't want to offend anybody. But we started to feel like people are going to hate me for saying it, but like we're like, oh, we're actually like we're actually doing that. Like we're actually, that's what music does. Now actually, no, I'll go back one step. What music does, like, and it doesn't matter who you are, it taps into some kind of thing, and then you start to understand how it works, and I think we started to learn these kind of things, and not that I'm starting to sound like some kind of genius. I'm not, like I just like a guy from Elemeno P, very modestly successful band from New Zealand, but I felt like we learned a hell of a lot, from that community. But, when we started a band, we weren't a Christian band. We had there's not one part of us that was thinking that we were a Christian band or in any way, it just wasn't our thing. But, Parachute used to ask us to play like every year because me and Scotty and Justin were kind of badasses from the community, like kind of like, like outcasts, like
the black sheep.
It's true. We are, but also kind of people like it, but also kind of they also hate it.
Yeah.
And so eventually, we decided to do it. I asked Lani, who was just a straight up non-Christian.
Yeah.
And I said, Lani, would you mind? And Lani's a legend. She was like, yeah, it's cool, Dave. If she was open to it. And then it was hilarious because there was a big backlash, like about whether or not we were Christian enough to play Parachute. It was like a leading story on TV1 and TV3. I got interviewed by both.
Really?
It was like, if you go and Google it now, like on Stuff, maybe, like there was hundreds of threat comments, about my behavior and my life, the way that I live my life, and how dare I even, do that, blah, 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 blah. And then so we did it. And then hilariously, we ended up being this kind of like controversial band playing Parachute, which I thought was also just hilarious.
Yeah, check this out. Yeah. I just Googled it. 26th of January 2016, Christian enough for Parachute. There you go. Dave Gibson, Elemeno P, he says, you could loosely call me a Christian. One of the main acts this weekend, Parachute Music Festival, has been accused of not being Christian enough. That's hilarious. That is hilarious. I laugh because it's like in some Christian music world, and I know a bit about it, and I worked for some organisations and stuff, there are some people who don't think, they call it the JPM, the Jesus per minute. If you don't say Jesus enough times per minute, that won't play on various radio stations, especially in America. It's hilarious.
Yeah, well, I think life is the great equalizer, and there's a lot of fake people. There's a lot of fake people around, and eventually life will be like, yo, what's up? Guess what? I'm life, and here is you being equal. I know you were trying to act like you weren't for a long time, and then surprise, surprise, poof. Carl Lentz is a really great example. I don't want him to say that. That's being mean of me to say, but blah blah blah.
The obviously the not being religious enough doesn't actually imply anything about what someone believes or a faith or a philosophy of life or whatever. And I've always kind of said that if you just look at these teachings that this person did 2,000 years ago, according to people who believe it, that looking after the widows and orphans, loving the people around you, not smacking someone down when you've probably done worse. You can't really argue with a lot of the teachings. Is that still something that's a sort of a part of your philosophy of life? Now, I'm not asking you, are you a Christian? It's not what I'm saying. I'm saying those kind of teachings and those life philosophies, which I actually think fit very comfortably in the left of politics, which is one of the ironies of the evangelical right. Is that still something that kind of comes from you that you hold on to?
Yeah, totally. But I don't think that Christianity has a monopoly on them. There's tons of other fantastic prophets, teachers, what have you, kind of philosophies from other religions that I don't think Christianity has a monopoly on it at all. And I feel like when you grow up in the church, you're going to feel like it has to have a monopoly on it. It's like, oh, how could you? If I wasn't a Christian, well, why wouldn't I just go and kill people? You know, if I didn't have the Ten Commandments, then what would I do? I don't believe that.
But I think you're right about the experience for church for a lot of people. Like I don't do the church thing at the moment, but when I used to live in Auckland, I was pretty heavily involved in that, and I can hold a tune, you know. But one of the reasons I can hold a tune and sing, not that I can, you know what I mean? Like I'm not terrible, is because every Sunday I was singing for an hour, and the average Kiwi bloke doesn't typically do that. And so the average Kiwi teenager like yourself gets involved and gets up the front and has opportunities, forget the almost religious aspect, to do things in the arts that many don't, purely because of being in that building. And I also wonder if any part
did in the rugby club.
Yeah, any part of that would also attribute to the bravado you felt in your early 20s, that sort of, because you've got the confidence or the upfrontedness, for want of a real word, from being in that environment for a portion of your life.
Yeah, totally. I think it was very, very supportive, and gave me a great sense of purpose. And it's difficult. I'm like in a dilemma about it as an older man, because I'm like, tons of it I really I wouldn't, you never want to change, you know. But some of it I definitely don't think is complete rubbish. So it's like you know, but I feel like, man, I wouldn't be who I am if I hadn't, wasn't raised like that. So, this is probably very boring, like for everybody that's watching. But it's like, but I think that's also life, right? It's not smooth sailing, and it's not exactly what you thought it was going to be.
We are a sum total of our experiences, which is why when I hear, my marriage ended 4 or 5 years ago, and you go back onto the kind of dating world, and as a person in their 40s, and it's very strange after a 18-year marriage, whatever it was, you hear people say things like, "Oh, I don't want anyone, no baggage," and I'm like, well, actually, another way to talk about baggage is my life experience that caused me to be the person I am today. So it kind of just depends how you look at it.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. I mean, everyone's got baggage, and everyone, every time you get to know somebody, then when you really get to know somebody, then you'll see all of their little hiccups and their faults. Anytime you get to know any band, bands are crapped up big time. I've never met a band that's functional.
Yeah,
like I would defy you to show me a band that's functional. That's like that. That is just like smooth sailing, that gets on just fantastically 24/7. I mean, because they're weird units. Like, they're creative, they're business entity. Like, most of the time, they start when you're really young, and you're trying to prove yourself, and you've got hiccups, and you've got insecurities. I would defy anybody to show me a functional band.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Anyway,
I'm just thinking about, I love watching documentaries on the creative process. One of my favorites is that Foo Fighters documentary, Back and Forth. But actually thinking about all the other things that I've kind of watched and seen in interviews, and actually you're right, there might be like members from within a band who are as thick as thieves, but the band as a unit, typically is not necessarily the most functioning unit.
And then like the thick and thieves thing too, like, it's funny you should say thick and thieves, because Scotty also often says it to me. It's like, you and Justin are thick as thieves, but the thickest thief thing rotates too, like I feel like most bands need an enemy, like, it's like, okay, who's the enemy? Okay, cool, that guy. All right, cool, and then and then it just rotates. It's like, okay, no, that guy's not the enemy anymore. It's this guy. Got to find someone to until you get to a I defy you. Like, and everyone says they get on really well, of course, most of the time.
But once again, it's one of those examples.
By the way, I am getting on really well with Elemeno P right now. That's not even PR. It's only because we're 20 years deep and we don't we're not like trying to prove anything anymore. Like, it was like, it is what it is. Like, it's not like we're going, oh my goodness, like what's happening with Elemeno P this morning? Like, none of us are thinking that, you know?
Yeah.
And I think it's only then when you kind of let go of that shit and relax and forget about it, then you're like, oh, you know. But when we're really maybe ambition's a problem, I don't know. But like, you know, we don't have any ambition.
Nothing as a band. I mean, the interesting thing at the moment, I think, is Elemeno P has become, I mean, it's only a decade ago that you kind of kicked it in a bit, but there's always seems to be tours coming up because it's so popular. And some of the songs you've written, I mean, you know, one of the greatest starts of a song of all times.
You sit down, I moved over.
That's my beautiful wife.
You're beautiful. I was going to ask, does she still like listening to punk rock? But that's a bit of a geeky question, I guess.
I'll ask her. Yeah. Do you still like listening to punk rock? Not really. She doesn't. No. She's on occasion, but she's polite.
I thought though as well, it's a place that I used to frequent when I lived in Auckland, which you'll recognise here, the actual Verona Cafe in K Road.
Great.
Is it a place you like when the 660 boys come back to Dunedin? They often go to 660 Castle Street. When I say often, it's not irregular that there will be a photo shoot at 660 Castle Street or outside it. Do you ever pop back in there just for kind of shits and giggles and memory things? And that's a place you want to visit when you're back in Auckland?
I do. I mean, I actually do have obviously it's a pretty important place to me. Like, I literally met my wife there. I was with a friend of mine called Piero, and I was hanging out with him. And then as fate would have it, Sarah walked in. Sarah knew Piero. She sat down, you know, I moved over, whatever. But really, basically what happened was she was just saying, hey, Piero, do you want to come to my 21st? And then I just said, can I come? And she was like, okay. And that's how our relationship began. Yeah.
That's cool.
So it means a lot. And I've been there. I did. Yeah. It is always kind of funny because I feel a little bit self-conscious when I go there, as you can maybe imagine. But I do really like it. You know, I just like it. Like, it's like we went there all the time in the late 90s and early 2000s. You know, like it was like we're just there on the regular, and we were in the city, like me and really all my good friends. Like I had a little crew: Simon Chesterman, Oliver Shearley, Justin Pilbrow from Elemeno P, Ivan Barge, Dom Glamazina. And we'd just all be rocking around like High Street, K Road, and the Central City. And most of us actually moved into the city at that time, which is in the kind of late 90s, which is what weird. Like, not many people were living there at the time, you know. So it was like kind of like a big kind of playground if you lived in the city, because everyone else lived in the suburbs.
Right.
Like everybody. Like I'd say 98% of people lived in the suburbs, and so they all had a limitation to their hanging out in the city, which we didn't have, because we just would walk up to our apartments, you know, which were few and far between and cool, but there was no supermarkets, blah, 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 blah. But we were in our 20s, we didn't care, you know. It was really great, but the Verona was a mainstay. Me and Justin lived on Grays Ave at the time, which was just around the corner, you know, in these kind of government-funded flats, you know, which we kind of got for really, really cheap. Yeah, it was really cool. It was an amazing time. And me and Justin would write songs all the time together. And basically, the way that Verona started is we would try to write some songs, blah, 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 blah. It wasn't working out. I was going out to do something. And just before I walked out the door, I said, Justin, what would you do if you're going to write a hit song? And he goes, da-da-da. Da-da-da.
Yeah, nice.
And that's how Verona started. And it's literally exactly how it happened. I said, Justin, what would you do if you're going to write a hit song? It's like, get in it. So, yeah, it's a really good memory of me and Justin at Grays Ave.
And you talked about having your offices in Tribeca. I was looking at your Streets of Laredo page on the nzmusic.org.nz. I have to say, this group of people here with their beards and long hair and skinny jeans look like you would fit in that scene absolutely perfectly and beautifully.
Good people, man.
Good people.
All good people.
Good people. And I was wondering, my understanding is, and correct me if I'm wrong, that that's sort of taken a bit of a backseat once children came along. So, as someone who's a musician and who writes music and performs music, and now you're managing music, there must be a part of you that still wants to get up on stage and stuff. Do you still get to do that very often? Does it happen? I mean, I guess COVID's fucked it for everybody, but in general?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I get to play with Elemeno P when I come back to New Zealand,
Yep.
which is fantastic. And I haven't played in New York for like a few years. Unfortunately, because our band, we had a baby, but I think the band just kind of stopped, as many bands do. If you move to New York City in a band and try to start a band, it's like you got all the normal difficulties of trying to be in a band, but also the extra difficulties of like, hey, you don't belong here. You're not an American,
Right?
You don't have the right visas. You don't have the right, like we're all just hustling, and eventually you get the right visas and all that kind of stuff, and then it's like, but everyone's, people have like run out of steam, and I often tell this like to the bands that I work with now, like especially awesome, amazing young bands. It's like most bands quit not because they're not fucking amazing or fantastic, but they ran out of steam.
Yeah.
And, like the bass player is like, I'm sick of being broke, I'm out. And you're like, oh, that's cool. It's just, we'll just get another bass player. And then the drummer's like, I'm out. And then all of a sudden the thread that made that band awesome, which is always bigger than some of its parts, you start to pull the threads, and then all of a sudden there's nothing, and I feel like that happens over and over and over again. That's what happened with Streets of Laredo. But we made 2 beautiful records that I'm really, really, really proud of, with a bunch of people, different people on the first for the second. Like me, it was always me, my brother Dan Gibson, amazing songwriter, beautiful human, and my beautiful wife Sarah Jane. But then we had different people on both records. But it's just a mission. Being in a band is a mission. You have to be so brutally brave to be in a band and just stick with it, in my humble opinion.
The opportunities with Streets of Laredo as well. I mean, I'll bring this up as well just to show you. Obviously a very different sound, but also the opportunity for shots like that in your music videos that you certainly couldn't get in New Zealand, that you could only get in New York. That's a pretty cool opportunity as well to sort of rebrand and show what the band is from a perspective of living over there as well. So must be cool to be able to.
It makes me emotional seeing that. I haven't seen it for a long time. That's beautiful.
That's great music, eh? I was thinking as well, as you were talking about when people leave the bands or when it kind of separates out, especially if it's a core component of it. And I remember, they were a teenage band, but they still kind of fly out as one of New Zealand's sort of greatest sort of hit writers with Supergroove, and their corner foundation was, Shay Fu and the Horns. And then they moved on, and they didn't have Shay Fu and they didn't have the Horns, and they weren't Supergroove. You know what I mean? And so that component was gone, and they weren't what they were. No criticism of them, just saying from what made them what they were, it wasn't in the mix anymore.
Yeah, and like most bands discover this after the fact,
Yeah.
You're like, oh my goodness, and same with Supergroove, obviously amazing band. And I actually, as a side note, really like a lot of songs of Backspacer as well. But the connection that they had on Traction was phenomenal, and amazing. And I think they probably understood that after the fact, like we all do.
Yeah.
We got to tour them quite a bit after the fact, and it was fantastic. Carl actually came and stayed at my place in Bushwick, while he was doing some stuff in New York City. He's an amazing man and done some really cool stuff with the Drab Do Riffs, his side project as well. And that is no longer happening either, but I love that band. And now I think he's like making a lot of music for film and TV.
Hey, it's been a lot of fun catching up with you tonight. I feel like it's time to let you go. You're in you manage isolation, your wife's there, your kids are asleep in the background, and I don't want to keep you all night. I think it's probably important and appropriate for us to put up one of the reasons you actually came to have a chat with us, and that's there's some stuff going on this summer with Elemeno P and the Feelers. There's a couple of gigs going on. Whitianga, New Plymouth, Taupō, Waihi and Paihia. You're not playing all of those dates.
So we're not playing Waihi and Paihia, just so you know.
Okay.
So we'll just do the first three.
Whitianga, New Plymouth, and Taupō. But I don't know. Do you want to talk about? You said to me this afternoon there was possibly some other stuff coming up.
Yeah. So also we kind of re-release all three of our albums on vinyl, which is pretty cool.
Very cool.
And so to support that, we're going to do like a major New Zealand tour. With the Feelers is going to be cool. We're going to do a major New Zealand tour. A couple of shows in February, and then all of March. It's going to be really cool. So we're going to go a lot of places. I'm really looking forward to that. That hasn't been announced. You heard it here first.
You heard it here first. Are you going to tie
the Department of Composition?
Are you going to tie that in with O Weeks? Surely you got to tie that in with O Weeks.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It's not what I do. I'm not involved in that, but maybe.
I think
maybe our promoter has figured it out. I mean, that's smart.
Yeah, I think March. If you, see you in Dunedin at O Week and do Victoria University. They're all pretty much the same time. You can just do them different. Just come down the country.
That's a good time. I've had some good times at O Weeks, especially in Dunedin.
Yeah.
And that bar downstairs, that other bar. I've had some good times.
Cool, man. Hey, look, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for putting up with my ridiculous questions about rumours about Elemeno P from 20 years ago.
It's good, man. I mean, it's kind of true, but yeah, I like it.
And if you, I don't know if you've got, obviously you haven't got your actual tour schedule yet, but if you guys are in Dunedin, when you're in Dunedin in March, would love to see you guys again, and who knows, maybe we can get a chance to chat to you again. One of the things we love in this Department of Conversation, is we just talk to anyone, anytime, anywhere. If you talk to someone a week ago and you want to talk to them next week, we can do that. So thank you for coming and joining us tonight, and I don't know, maybe we'll see you in the new year in Dunedin.
Yeah, cool, Pat. Thank you so much. Appreciate the time. Appreciate your situation. Great questions.
All right.
Good stuff.
Cheers, Dave.